So contract management. There is a proper flow of grant dollars. Every year the state of Missouri enters into a contract, also called a grant agreement with HUD. This contract outlines the necessary compliance measures and eligibility standards and the intended use of those funds. And we are held accountable to these terms and applicable laws. We then pass those funds down onto the subrecipients, where we do have the same expectations. A contract is executed, again, called the grant agreement, and it lays out those necessary compliance measures, eligibility standards, et cetera, that are to be filled at the local level. Common rules regarding contracting. All services paid with CDBG funds must be secured by a formal, properly executed contract. This is anything from administration, professional services, engineering, and construction and demolition. A formal, properly executed contract must be signed and dated. Dating signatures are important as it establishes a clear timeline, demonstrates intent, and prevents fraud. Proper contract execution protects the rights of all parties involved. The contract describes responsibilities of everyone performing a function in the project. The subrecipient must determine who has legal authority to enter into and sign a contract for the community. This is your highest elected official. The subrecipient is responsible for reviewing the content. Check with your compliance specialist for the review preference. Administrators should be doing this as they are hired to ensure compliance with CDBG for subrecipients. Civil rights and labor standard certifications must be in all CDBG funded contracts, as well as things like anti-lobbying and anti-kickback. All CDBG programs now require completion times and liquidated damages in all construction contracts for the protection of the project and the subrecipient. These spells out dates when the contract expires and institutes monetary penalties to the contractor. We just want to make sure that they are staying on track and that they're not trying to do any bad business deals. If fraud or related criminal activity is suspected of a contractor, let us know. Inform your compliance specialist. There are ways of reporting this to DOLR or HUD or HUD.OIG. Review the contract. That is very important. Make sure you are understanding the language of the contract. I'll actually take a moment here and tell you a little personal storyline. A while back, I put in an offer on a house, and part of my offer was that they built a fence around the backyard. Well, they had to send back a counter offer with, what materials will be used and the lengths of the fence. And as I'm reading it, it's saying that the fence would be 44 quotation long, 57 quotation wide, and 44 quotation back with a 4 quotation gate. I say that because as you're reading measurements, when they have quotations, that means inches. So me, a prudent person, knew they meant feet. Like, it was obviously a clerical error. But if I had signed that contract, they would only be obligated in building a 44-inch by 57-inch by 44-inch fence with a 4-inch gate. So I had to send that, and I don't know if you noticed, actually, I'm not fitting through no 4-inch gate anytime soon. So I sent that back, made sure that they made the corrections, and there you go, we were able to do that. So, a little personal story. Costs must be based on unit price or lump sum. Watch for hidden costs, hourly rates for added services, and brand names. Needs to be a lump sum with an equal to clause. Equal to clause is language that will tell you the brand names are for explanatory purposes and that any product equal to the brand name is allowed. Pre-selection of professional services, make sure there is a contingency clause in contract stating, in the event grant funds are not awarded to the owner by the CDBG program, this agreement shall be terminated by the owner. Check listing of debarred contractors, firms for all services paid for by CDBG funds. Again, we gotta do our debar checks, make sure everyone's in good business practices. Must be licensed to do business in Missouri. Gotta make sure CDBG funds, federal funds given to the state of Missouri, going to Missouri businesses. Contractors must be in good standing with the Secretary of State. A bonding company must be listed with the Department of Treasury listings of certified companies. And recipients of CDBG funds must be organized company and have an EIN. So when it comes to the bonding company, it's got to be listed on that Department of Treasury's list of approved sureties. This is for performance and payment bonds required on all contracts of $100,000 or more. Bonds should not have an expiration date. Make sure to use current and correct forms. Close attention should be paid to Section 3, new rule, old rule applicability. As we went over earlier this week, most of the projects will be under the new rule, but there are some out there that are still under old rule. Make sure the correct state and federal wage rates in the contract, if partially funded by CDBG and USDA Rural Development. The project requires different forms, so you got to reach out to USDA, make sure that they have everything that you need in the contract. E-Verify affidavit required for all contracts up front. There are some necessary contract documents. A signed contract and signed contract documents must be put together as one to have a complete set of contract documents, also like a packet. We want to make sure everything's all together. Subrecipients must have an original signed bound contract. Other parties may also request an original contract, but they can also receive copies. All parties hired by the subrecipient to assist with the grant funds must have a copy of the executed contract just so that they know what their expectations are to fulfill their duties in that contract. All changes must be done by change orders. We gotta make sure that every change, every amendment you do is done in writing. You can't just have a verbal handshake contract. If entering into a contract for CDBG, DR, or MIT funds, the full contract must be provided to us. Again, we have Federal Register notice that we have to report it onto our website. Contract payment. Use subrecipient's cash obligation, including loans, first or proportionally along with CDBG funds. Use CDBG grant funds second and other grant funds concurrently or afterwards. Documentation of payments must be kept for CDBG match. As described earlier, in-kind funds can be used concurrently throughout the life of the grant. There is an amendment procedure if during the life of the contract parties agree to make a change of a formal amendment must be executed. For the amendment to be valid, again, it must be done in writing, signed and attested by both parties. CDBG compliance specialist should review if changes will affect CDBG dollars. This is that budget amendment that Tiffany went over yesterday. Certificate of completed work. A copy of the certificate for acceptance and final payment must be signed by the engineer and submitted to CDBG prior to project closeout. Just want to make sure that they are certifying the work is done and everything meets up to their expectations. The certificate must state that work has been completed in accordance with drawings and specifications. Some helpful hints. Every contract needs a beginning and an end date. If your attorney did not write the contract, read it and understand it before signing it. I know that some subrecipients can't afford the legal aspect of getting a contract understood, but just make sure that they're understanding it before they sign it. Keep track of payments made in accordance with contract terms and pay attention to cost additions and termination conditions in all contracts. We do provide a contract content guide with up-to-date language from HUD of what should be in a contract bid packet. It helps the subrecipients stay compliant with HUD guidelines. We do have contract samples online. They can be out of date though. Refer to the content guide to update any language.